Wednesday, or good afternoon if it's afternoon when you're watching this today. You guys normally see me with a very clean space in my background, but today you're not going to see that because it's a mess. And I've been way overwhelmed this week. But I want you guys to know that it's okay if your shit's not always together, right? If you can't do it all this week, if you can't do it all today, if you can't do everything that you normally do in a day, don't hound yourself about it. It's okay to sometimes leave things until tomorrow. Now, don't get me wrong, like, we don't want to continue that pattern, right? Because then it just piles up and it piles up and it piles up, and then it becomes overwhelming and suffocating, and it's just a disaster. But don't be so hard on yourself. Give yourself a little bit of grace every now and then. I've had a lot on my plate this week. And then coming off of a week of the fair, first week of school, everything, it's been a lot. So catch me drinking my coffee out of my favorite coffee mug this morning, because this is what we're not gonna do today. I need my peace, I need my blessings, I need all the negativity away from me. So yeah, normally I pre-record these episodes. I didn't get a chance to do that last week because things were just chaotic and crazy. So here I am, Wednesday morning. My house is a mess, and I am on here recording this episode because I just got done with my workout, and the kids are off to school, except for one. She's been struggling this week with a sickness, and here I am doing this before I go to work. So I'm on here today to talk about addiction. And so my mess in the background is very appropriate because addiction is messy, right? Addiction is so messy, and sometimes life is messy, and that's what leads to addiction, because we look for something to cover up that pain and cover up that emptiness that we feel, or cover up that trauma. We don't want to feel the pain from that, so we look for something to put on as a band-aid to cover that up, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's porn addiction, food addiction. There's so many addictions that we just don't even realize, like I talked about last week, like the legal addictions we don't understand or realize, because so many things are legal and we indulge in them. And we think of it just as that, as like, I'm just doing this because it's available and because I can and whatever. But we don't realize that it's quickly becoming an addiction and something that we're dependent on and codependent. Addictions can be in relationships, styles, can just so many different things. We can have shopping addictions. We can have all of these different types of addictions. And so I'm gonna go back to the relationship styles for a minute, because my sister and I went and saw a movie this past weekend, and the movie was It Ends With Us. Great movie. I highly recommend it, but I do put some trigger warnings out there, because if you grew up in a domestic violent home, if you have been in DV relationships, if you know loved ones who have lost lives to DV, it's a very triggering movie. But it is very, very true and authentic, and I appreciated the movie very much. Did have a little bit of a breakdown when I left the theater, but I held it together while we were in there, and my sister and I enjoyed this time together, and it was a great movie for us. But ever since we saw that movie this week, I've really been struggling. I have been going over and over in my head. It was supposed to end with us, with my sister and I, right? The domestic violence, the addiction, all of the things, and all the things that we grew up with. And it didn't. It took Hayden's death, Hayden's murder, for it to end for our family, because now all of the kids, that were impacted by this, my nieces, my nephews, my own children, you know, cousins, everybody. Now we're all looking at this situation, and the kids are like, I am never going to put myself in that position. And I mean, I know we all say that, right? Like, I've said that a million times growing up. Like, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to let anybody treat me that way. But then we do. Until someone is actually killed by acts of violence. And then it's a totally different understanding. It's a totally different meaning for you. And so then you begin to say, like, this is never going to happen to me. This ends with me. And it truly does, because that person lost their life to the violence. So I was really struggling with that this week. Like, why did it have to be her? Why did it have to be Hayden? Like, it was supposed to be me. But oftentimes the plans that we have for life, or the expectations that we have for life, that's not always how it's going to play out. Most of the time, that's not how it's going to play out, right? And I'm a faithful person. I love the Lord. I wake up every day. I pray. First thing I do is thank God for another day with my children, with my family. And a lot of people think that being faithful or being religious means that nothing bad is ever going to happen to you. And that's not the promise. The promise is not that nothing bad is ever going to happen to you, because the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy, right? So just because something evil comes and rips something away from you or tries to break you down to nothing doesn't mean that God's still not in it, that he's not present. He's not causing this horrible thing to happen. But I look back on a friend of mine lost a small child to acts of violence this week in their family. And I looked, like, there was a video of this child being baptized, and I look back and I think, like, Hayden was baptized too. And when I look at those pictures, when I walk in my sister's house, because she has her whole memory board up there in the kitchen, it's so amazing to me that I know now, like, where my baby is, right? Even though she's not here with me, like, she knew where she was going. She knew. She knew. And I know that someday I'll be able to be with her and see her again in eternity, in the most beautiful place on that I can't even imagine, because the kingdom is his, and it's glorious, and it's wonderful. And I look forward to that, and I have that promise that eventually one day again I'll be with her. So I've been really just struggling with this whole situation this week, and 10,000 times I've wanted to just crack open this bottle of wine that I still have under my counter in the kitchen that my dad made. My dad was a huge fan of making wine, and he made some of the best homemade wine you'll ever have. He's made dandelion wine, cherry wine, strawberry wine, grape wine, tomato wine, which I thought would be the most disgusting thing on the face of the earth, but surprisingly, it's really not. So he always made wine when we were growing up. He would pay my sister and I $2 an hour to go and pick dandelions out of our yard and fill up 5-gallon buckets so he could make some wine. And I'm telling you, it was the best wine I've ever had. But when my dad died, I went through a storage unit that he had in Southern Virginia and found tons and tons of his wine. So for his memorial service, I took it and shared it with, you know, everyone that showed up and things. But I did keep the last bottle of grape wine that he ever made, and I kept that. And every year on the anniversary of his death, October 22nd, I drink a glass of that wine and cheers to my dad in heaven. So I still have a little bit of that wine left, and this week I have really wanted to just say screw it and drink the whole bottle, because I'm dealing with it and I'm going through it, and I have all these why did it have to be questions rolling around in my head, right? But then I had to sit back and think, like, if I drink that, one, it's just going to make me sad. It's going to not fix anything. I'm still going to feel like this tomorrow, right? And then I started thinking of it a little bit differently. Like, what would I say to my kid? Like, if this was my kid right now coming to me saying, like, I just want to drink so bad right now, what am I supposed to do? What would I say to them? And that's what I need to be telling myself right now, right? So it's all about switching the narrative and switching the mindset. And some addictions are way, way deeper than others. Some people need in-house treatment for a significant amount of time. Some people need outpatient therapy for a significant amount of time. Some people are able and have the strength and the ability to just quit and never look back and, you know, be fine with that and be okay and in recovery. And that's another thing that people don't realize, because just because we quit something doesn't mean that that urge goes away, or that those memories go away of how we felt, you know, when we were using and things like that. So I feel like understanding from a non-addictive place that these addicts struggle every single day worse than you could ever imagine. It's like your kid with a phone. When you take the phone away from them and they start having this major temper tantrum, like, I want the phone, like, whine. It's like, oh my gosh, can you just stop? You're not getting the phone back. So that's the same response that an addict has when they stop using, and then something happens and they have this major meltdown, and their initial reaction is to go to that. So we're creating addicts out of our kids by handing them a tablet or handing them a phone every time they have a bad day, or every time they're having a meltdown. Here, take this, just be quiet. No, because we're teaching them that they need something to be okay, right? Instead of finding out and talking to them and saying, what is the problem right now? What can we do to get you through this, without covering it up with something like a substance or a phone or alcohol, anything. So, and I remember years ago, I posted this post on Facebook. I had my daughter in the ER. She was very sick. And so we're sitting in the ER. We're in there for hours. She's a baby. I'm tired. I'm like over it. Just want to go home, you know, get my baby some medicine and go home. And the EMTs roll in, and they have somebody on this gurney, and it's an active overdose. And they take this person immediately back, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, like, this person did that to themselves. My kid didn't. My kid is sick and like has an illness and running a fever of 104, and she's 2 years old and she needs treatment right now. And now they're taking this person that chose to do that to themselves, right? So I posted this post on Facebook, and it caused a whole shitstorm. Like, I lost friends, I lost, you know, people. But at that point, I didn't have the knowledge or the understanding, or maybe I did, because I knew the struggle of addiction. I knew the struggle of being in recovery, but I wasn't thinking about that, right? I was just being judgmental instead of being understanding and saying, okay, this person is sicker than my child. Like, this person's life is at stake right now. My child's life is not potentially at stake right now, because yes, she has a fever. Yes, she's sick, but she's literally not about to go into cardiac arrest. So years later, I mean, it took me years. I ended up going to school and doing some college courses on substance abuse counseling, because it started really weighing on me that I needed to be a counselor for youth that have lived through domestic violence and experienced addiction in the home, or were addicted themselves, or things like that, because I wanted to be a counselor to be able to guide these children and help these children through these traumas and through these addictions. So I feel like I've always had a a soul and a need to help others, especially kids that have experienced DV and lived through it, because that's very traumatic. Addiction is very traumatic as a child when you have to live through that and watch people that you love suffer from addictions. Most of my childhood, my parents were in and out of jail for alcohol addictions, for DUIs, and that was a struggle for me, because they would have my sister and I go to the jail for visits with my parents, and we would just cry and cry and cry, and they would be crying, we would be crying, everybody around us is crying. You can't touch the person, you can't hug the person, it's just behind this glass, and it's the most traumatic thing I've ever experienced as a kid. And so thinking back to all of that years later after this hospital incident, I'm like, I need to help these people. I need to help people, you know, with that are experiencing this and that are suffering through this. So I went to school, did that, never got to finish my clinicals, so I ended up finishing with only a certificate and not an actual degree, which is fine, because now I do HR and I love it, and I literally could retire in the job that I'm at now and be completely happy with that. But my point to this is that so often in our society, addiction is judged instead of understood. And until we get to that point as a society of understanding, there's never going to be the actual help and guidance that these addicts need to make full, complete recoveries. So stop judging them. Offer help to someone. If you see someone on the side of the road, like we have so many panhandlers around here, homeless people, Winchester, you know, everywhere, and clearly they're addicts, right? So put some little baggies together in your car, hand warmers, toothbrush, toothpaste, liquid IV packets, like whatever it might be, and a little card in there that has a recovery place in it. NA meetings, AA meetings, whatever. Actually, maybe that's something I'll do, is try to get some of those printed out, and if you're in my area local to me, let me know. I'll get them to you, and we can start doing this as a collective community outreach almost, you know, just giving these people that little bit of a nugget that they need to stay clean and stay in recovery and seek help if they haven't, and just know that there are people out there that care about them and want to see them healthy and happy and in recovery. And recovery is not something that somebody goes into and just automatically like, oh, you're in recovery, you're great now. No, it's like being in remission from cancer. Like when someone is in remission, yes, that means that the cancer is gone right now, but they have to have regular checkups, regular scans, regular maintenance, like things to make sure that that cancer stays away, right? And that it doesn't come back, it's not reoccurring. So why do we expect recovery to be different than that? Recovery requires maintenance every single day. Recovery requires checkups so often, meetings and therapy and support groups, sponsors, everything, right? So we have to stop expecting recovery to be instant and permanent, because it's not, just like remission in a cancer patient. So let's change our perspective and change our mindset and be able to help these addicts into recovery and through recovery. It's a lifelong journey. It's not something we forget about, right? I have also, so my family has been extremely, extremely affected by addictions of all sorts. I have family members in prison for addiction. I have family members who have been through and out of prison for addiction, my dad included. I have family members who have lived through the addiction as children, like watching their parents as addicts, and have completely went the other route as adults and said from a young child, like, I'm never going to do this. I'm not going to put my kids through this. We're breaking that cycle. It's ending with us. This ends with us. And it has, and it's been amazing. And I applaud those everybody, not just my family members, but everyone who has done that. And when you grow up like that, you have two choices. You follow the lifestyle that you've always known, or you say, no, I'm taking a left turn here, and I'm going to be the outcast. I'm going to be the black sheep. I'm going the other way. I'm not going to do that. And that's a hard choice to make. And it takes, everyone experiences trauma differently, right? And addiction does end in trauma, always. It's always some kind of trauma that's caused from the addiction and that causes the addiction. So somebody goes through something, they have a shit day, all of a sudden they're in this group of people that are like, oh, here, this will make you feel better, just do this, and you do it the one time, and that activates that addiction in your brain, right? So it's not like we choose to continue to use over and over and over. No. Once you have that, once you use that first time, our brains are altered and affected to it's like it activates that addictive state that we have. And then we're like, oh, okay, trauma response. This makes me feel better when I feel like this. So then that's when the addiction becomes a need and a problem. When our brain switches and we now have that immediate reaction to trauma that we need this other thing to make us feel better. And that is a hard thing to overcome. So all this week when I've wanted to take that sip of that wine and just drink the rest of that bottle, I have not. I have said, like, what would I say to my kids if they were in this situation? What would I do to help them, right? And I always tell my kids, like, you have one chance with me. I've told other family members this. You have one chance with me. I will help you and try to get you through this, but if you screw it up, you're on your own. And I stick to that, and I'm very stern with that, because I will not ever be an enabler. Ever, 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 ever. But I will always give you a chance to do better. One chance. Because, again, I'm not an enabler. I'm not a crutch. I'm not going to be used. This is your one chance. Make it worth it. And so I had to tell myself that this week. Like, back in December when I decided, like, I can't drink anymore at all, not even a glass, because it's too much, makes me sad, makes me cry, whatever, and then I end up drinking the whole bottle. It really sits with me now. Like, I have to remind myself, like, you're in your chance. You screw this up, then what? Like, no, we're not doing that. So I have to be very disciplined. I have to be very much accountable. I have to hold myself accountable. And if that means like doing an AA Al-Anon meeting or an online Al-Anon meeting, an online AA meeting, I did drop all those links last week on the Facebook page. So check that out, the podcast Pocketful of Sunshine on Facebook. There's tons of resource links on there. They're very helpful. But again, my family has been extremely affected by addiction. I lost one of the best friends I ever had from addiction. She was just amazing, and I miss her every day, and I love her so much. And that was a hard one for me. And I've had family members that have overdosed, and the 31st of this week is the 30th, I'm sorry, is overdose awareness, right? And if you've ever been affected by overdose, it's something that I can't imagine. I have never witnessed an overdose face to face, but both of my sisters have, my brother, they have seen this, and people that were extremely close to them and that we grew up with and that they've loved for years, like they've watched this right in front of them, and I can't imagine the trauma that they experienced going through this. And luckily they were able to save those people, but it still affects you so just in a way that I can never imagine because I've never experienced it. So I wouldn't even try to imagine, right? But I know how it feels to be affected by addiction because you've lost someone to addiction. And there's so many different emotions. Like, you go through feelings of, you know, I'm glad they're not suffering anymore. Feelings of being so pissed off at whoever gave them whatever it was that they overdosed on. Feelings of sadness for their family, for their children, for their friends, for everybody that is suffering because they lost this battle to addiction. And people that are affected by addiction often think that they don't need therapy either. You know, they don't need these AA classes. They don't need these NA classes. They don't need these Al-Anon classes. But when we, as people who are affected, go to these meetings, it gives us a greater understanding of the struggle these addicts have, right? It's not going to take away the pain. It's not going to take away their addiction. It's not going to take away our trauma. But mindset is everything, guys. And when we understand, when we try to put ourselves in different positions and different perspectives and understand what someone is going through instead of just instantly judging them like I did that night at the ER, it makes us a better person. Education is everything. Education is key, right? We can't sit back and judge somebody for something that we fully don't understand. And so we have to educate ourselves before we can help anyone else. The same with our kids. Like, if we didn't have all this life experience, if we didn't have all of these things we've been through, all this trauma, whatever, we'd never be able to guide our kids in a healthy, safe direction because we wouldn't have the life skills, the trauma response, the ability to navigate through pain, to navigate through addiction, to navigate through trauma, any of this stuff. And we just wouldn't be able to be the parents that we have to be for our kids, right? So it's so important to educate ourselves and to give ourselves grace because it's not always going to be clean. Like this pile of laundry behind me. It is folded, but it's not put away. So just be patient. It's August. It's Overdose Awareness Month. Again, help somebody on the street. Give them a resource. Give them, you know, even if it's a ride to a meeting. Whatever it is that you are able to do, just do it this month. The whole month of September, I want you guys to do that. Just be willing to help somebody that's struggling with addiction. Be willing to pray for somebody that has been affected by overdose. Whether they survived it or they didn't. If they didn't, pray for their family. Pray that that was the this ends with us moment that they needed in that life, in that family. If they survived it, again, pray that it's the this ends with us for them. Like, this is not going to happen to me anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. Be a sponsor if that's what you feel led to do. Attend meetings. Just get to know people and understand really what their trauma is if they're willing to share that with you, and be a friend to them and help them through it. Don't be an enabler. I'm not saying that. Like, we definitely don't want to enable an addict to continue to relapse, but we want to be a support system and help guide them into a better direction. Sometimes I have tried to do that myself with people that I love, and they continue and continue and continue and continue to relapse. And that's something that you have to learn to set a boundary with as well. So there has to be boundaries. And if you feel like you're becoming an enabler and it's just continue like relapse, they need more than you. That addict needs more than your help. And at that point, it's suffocating you, and you have to separate yourself from that situation. So it's okay to love them and walk away and say, I cannot help you right now. You need more than what I can provide for you. this is what you can do. I can help you get there, whether it's a recovery in-house, outpatient, whatever. But if you're not willing to do that, then I need to step back. I need to step away. And it's okay to do that too. Because an addict is an active addict, somebody that is in addiction current. They're not going to change and not going to get help unless they're ready. So you can't force someone into recovery. You can't talk someone into recovery. You just have to be available when they're ready for recovery. And when they come to you and say, I've had enough, I can't do this anymore. Okay, now here I am. Let's figure it out. So take that away this week. If you have ever been affected by overdose and lost someone that you love to overdose, my heart just goes out to you. It really does. And when you're cleaning up your space this week and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I wait so long to do this? Just be graceful. Think about the addict and think about how that's exactly how they feel. When they are asking you for help for recovery, that's how they feel. Why did I wait so long to do this? I can't do this anymore. I can't sit in this mess anymore. I got to clean it up. So clean your space, get it together, be love, be light, be a pocket full of sunshine, because that's what we're here for. And again, check out the Facebook page. I've got all kinds of resource links on there. I will keep you guys posted on these resource link prints that I want to get done so that we can hand out in the community and things like that, and do a little community outreach for addiction and overdose awareness. So stay tuned. I'll keep you guys posted on that. Thank you for listening again this week. If you want to share a story with me, if you have a trauma that is caused by overdose or addiction, please email me, podcastpocketfulofsunshine@gmail.com. I'd love to have you on the show or read your story anonymously, whatever you prefer. But sharing your stories and your experiences really do help people, especially in this little community that we're building together in the podcast Pocketful of Sunshine. And I appreciate you all, and I love you so much. And I will see you next week. Bye.